am now going to discuss uh, some other important issues before we close the session on purchasing management. And the first issue is the selection of the suppliers. Then once the supplier is selected, then you go for measuring the performance of the suppliers. So, the supplier performance measurement and evaluation, that is an important topic we are going to discuss. Now, the purchasing department performance is also a very important issue. So, we will highlight some of the important the issues, the factors to be considered for purchasing department's performance measurement, and the purchasing relationship with inventory control systems. In specific terms, you must be aware of. Now, I have already in the previous lecture session, I have already highlighted the importance of supplier selection. That means you go for make or buy decisions. Supposing for a given item, your decision is buy. That means you are going to purchase that item from the source of the supply. So now, so obviously, the next the course of action is the selection of the supplier. Now, it is an important issue, and we select a supplier or a group of suppliers for the given item or the material, following certain norms, following certain procedures. So, and this the selection of the suppliers usually consists of 4 interrelated stages. First one is the survey stage, the second one is the inquiry stage, third one is the negotiation stage, and fourth one is the experience stage. So, these are the 4 phases, and you need to go through all these, or you have to say the follow, or you have to use certain, or you have to carry out activities as required in each of the 4 stages. So, let us talk about the survey stage. That means, suppose the item you are going to purchase, this item is to be purchased for the first time. So, you need to first select a group of prospective suppliers or the possible suppliers, and then so in the survey stage you try to make a list of the possible suppliers, and out of this list of possible suppliers, then you will be selecting a few suppliers with which you start negotiating for purchase. So, at the survey stage, there is a need. Why do you need to the survey? In all the purchasing problems, there is a need for a material or a product. Exact specifications may not be known. That means, suppose it is a new product and you have some specifications, but exactness is missing, but its general nature and purpose are known. What is available on the market? You should explore. Who are the possible suppliers? Who makes such a product, or who can make it? So, also similar products you may come across, or a situation where you are specifying the product, exact specifications are known, but when you make a survey of the market, you find that that exact the product with that exact specification is not available, but a similar product may be available in the market. who makes such a product or who can make it, who can supply it more satisfactorily and most economically. Information on all those aspects can be collected from one or more of the sources. So, what you try to do, this is the first time you are going to purchase it. So, where from you get this basic information. Now, these sources could be the trade directories, regional directories published by the chambers of commerce, manufacturers and distributors, catalogs, salespersons, information you collect from the salespersons, because you have been running the purchase department for a long time. So, obviously, you are aware of who are the you are aware of the presence of say the salespersons in your department. So, why don't you interact with them? Standard industrial classification documents. Okay. So, you refer to, so you will get the list of products under different categories, and who are the suppliers or the registered suppliers against each category of the products. So, SIC documents you refer to, and information from such websites. Okay. So, these are the possible sources of information. Now, the buyer can prepare a workable list of possible sources, workable, that is the point to be noted. The sources that appear to be reliable, that is why it is workable. Conveniently located, that is why it is workable, and have manufacturing capability and experience as needed, are to be preferred to be the likely sources of supply. So, three important factors you consider. First one is the reliability, second one is the location, and the third one is the manufacturing capability and experience. If the product is of general or routine type, maybe a standard product, a request for bidding may be made to this list of suppliers. So, now you find that this is a standard component, this is a standardized design. However, if the product to be purchased is of special type, is it okay? Many a time we come across this situation. In fact, there is a need for intermediate stage of inquiry and research. You are getting the information, but this is not a complete information with respect to this specialized product, which you are going to say the procure. So, you move to the next stage, that is called inquiry stage or the research stage. At this stage, the main objective is to select a small group of suppliers from the list of possible suppliers. Inquiry is directed toward more specific information. Now, you become more specific, like the suppliers' production facilities and capacity. So, this must be known, the suppliers' production facilities and the capacities, financial stability, product quality, technical competence. Okay, please note down all these points. Manufacturing efficiency, general business policies, position and status in industry, progressiveness or attitude and adoption toward state of the art or new technology, whether it is a progressive organization or not. That means the organization is open to adopt, say, the new technologies or the state of the art technologies and procedures or the systems. Now, interest and cooperative attitude. So, these are the important factors you consider. So, many a time you may go for using some say survey technique to get the details. The aim is to find those suppliers who can be relied on as a continuous source of supply under all conditions. That means, what you are trying to do, that means you try to create a supplier base, and with each supplier in this base, you want to have a long standing relationship, who will keep their delivery promises and other service obligations. This is a very important issue. and who are competitive on price. Okay. Many a time a visit to suppliers' facilities and the sites is made to confirm the supplier's information. So, this is just for verification purpose. You make a visit to the possible supplier's plants and you get a first hand knowledge of what is the actual practice or what is the actual strength of the company vis-a-vis your purchase requirements. On completion of the inquiry process, the list of several acceptable supply sources is prepared. Normally, this is the case with whom the buyer wishes to place a purchase order for the given item. So, if you take an open approach, in always you will find that not only one the source of supply, a group of the possible sources of supply you will come to know, and maybe all are of equal strength or equal competence. So, now what you do? You go for negotiation with say the possible say the suppliers, and while you negotiate you have you gain some experience. So, that is why it is also referred to as the negotiation and experience stage. On completion of the inquiry stage, we may come very close to the decision. However, the final decision to select the suppliers is made after negotiating the details of requirements and terms and conditions face to face in majority of the cases, face to face. The basic, that means you need to discuss all these important issues with the supplier company's representatives. The basic objective of negotiation is to ascertain the best value from the purchase. So, this point is to be noted, the best value from the purchase, and this value is assessed in terms of three specific factors: quality, service and price. There may also be other intangible factors, okay, determining the overall values of the purchase, like level of interest, that is the first factor, observation and goodwill, special circumstances like fulfilling interest of smaller enterprise, okay, like SMEs, small and medium enterprises, availability of skilled and knowledge manpower, scheduling and other systems. That means, these are the special requirements you need to say the fulfill. Negotiation on this factor rests primarily on the buyer's ability to assess adequately the price of the item as quoted by the supplier. So, that is most important in fact. That means, you are paying a price, but this price the covers which aspects. That means, what are the important aspect covered under this price. So, in this context, the buyer may face one of the following three situations while the negotiation is on. Now, as a buyer, you may be fully aware of the supplier's production system, okay, and details of the cost components of the item concerned. So, how do you negotiate? Okay. So, how do you determine the price, or how do you negotiate? The other extreme, you don't, as a buyer, you have no idea at all about the supplier's production system or the cost components of the item concerned. Is it okay? So, this is a very common occurrence. As a purchase officer, you have knowledge in one particular discipline, but this the product comes from a different discipline. So, obviously, in most likely you do not have any knowledge about their production systems or the other aspects of the product, but you can't say that you cannot negotiate. So, what should be your approach for negotiation, so that your company as a buyer, as a buyer's company, gets the maximum the benefit out of this the negotiation. And in between, you also come across a case, as far as the negotiation is concerned, the buyer has partial information about the supplier's production system, production systems and cost components of the item concerned. So, 3 different strategies are to be adopted. I am not going to discuss all these different strategies. This is the management, the related problems, but you just make a note that 3 different strategies are to be adopted by the buyer in these 3 situations. Okay. But just make a note that negotiation is a very important component in arriving at a decision on the price of the product. On completion of negotiation, usually 2 or 3 suppliers are selected for an order. This is a very common occurrence. These quantities are proportionally shared by them as per their individual capacity and constraint on supply due date. Okay. So, it may so happen that you have selected 3 companies A, B and C. So, what we may suggest that the company A will be given the 40% of the quantity required, company B also 40% of the total quantity, and the company C may be given say the 20% of the total the quantity required. More than one supplier source is selected for 2 reasons: to protect buyer supply lines against supplier shutdowns due to strikes or acts of God, and the second reason is to encourage competitiveness among the suppliers. So, this is an important issue in today's context. Your order share may increase if you outperform your competitor. So, this is the message you are giving to your supplier. However, the buyer company should move to a policy of sole sourcing. So, this is the present trend, sole sourcing for each or group of items in the long run. So, that is your the long term goal, that for each and every item or even for the group of items you need to have just one supplier. Okay. So, that is the sole sourcing. So, you have to go through all the steps, and later on out of the many the suppliers, you select one of them as the only supplier for a given item or for a group of items. So, this concept is well accepted by many progressive organizations these days. On assessing the performance of a supplier under trial and repeat orders, and the supplier qualifying the standards set by the buyer company are approved as an approved supplier. So, this is the thing. Now, so once the suppliers are selected, what you try to do? Now, you go for that means orders are given, and orders are given initially as a trial orders, and then you will find that that particular supplier's performance is well accepted. So, ultimately the supplier is included in the list of approved vendors or approved suppliers. Now, the performance measurement and evaluation of suppliers is essential at this stage. So, what you try to do? That means you go for an objective assessment and rating of supplier performance. So, this is always preferred, objective assessment. But however, this point is to be noted that even a comprehensive and computerized performance assessment systems in this context is acceptable only when the buyer is capable of interpreting and taking corrective or preventive measures for improving the supplier performance for the benefit of the company. That means, one point you must not forget, that is any the performance, the measurement and assessment systems you opt exclusively for one purpose, that is the improvement. That means, if the systems of performance measurement and evaluation for the suppliers is installed, the main purpose is how to improve the performance of the supplier. So, the rating system in this context considers 3 important criteria factors. So, what are these factors? The first factor is the quality, the second factor is the service or the delivery, and the third one is the price. Now, out of these 3 factors, one may be given more importance or weightage for a particular case. So, So, this is very important. That means, 3 important factors you need to consider. There may be the use of rating scale, the point rating for the factors for objective evaluation. Is it okay? So, many a time you need to consider say the subjective factors also. So, against the subjective factor, obviously you need to use some rating scale. For example, quality may be rated at 40 points, that means the individual weightages. So, the price at 35, that means its individual weight is 35 and the service as 25 out of total points of 100. That means, with respect to the item or with respect to the material the considered for purchase, you need to determine these weightages. So, what you try to do that you develop your performance rating systems, and in course of time when you start collecting data, so you must be able to validate the performance measurement systems which you have developed, which you have adopted. That means, as soon as you say that that you have developed the performance measure system, that means immediately it will be assumed that it has been validated. So, this is an example. Suppose a supplier delivers 58 lots during the past year, of which 2 were rejected. The percentage of goods lots is 96.5 multiplied by the weight factor of 40. I have already mentioned the supplier has a quality rating of 38.6. The lowest net factor is the price. The lowest net price from any supplier is rupees 100. The supplier's price is rupees 120, and by inverse ratio the supplier's price in performance is 83.3%. Okay. Multiplied by the weight factor 35, the supplier has a price rating of 29.5. Of the 58 lots delivered, 55 were received as promised. This is 94.8% performance. Multiplied by the weight factor of 25, the supplier has a service rating of 23.7. So, these are very simple calculations we have made. Hence, the total performance rating of the supplier is 38.6 plus 29.5 plus 23.7, that is 91.8. So, this is just an example. Now, in the typical rating system, that means you may call it a comprehensive systems, may consider 4 principal factors. So, the factors related to the company, the factors related to the service, the factors related to the products, and the factors related to the salespersons. So, these are the 4 factors to be considered in a comprehensive performance measurement systems, and with weights of each principal factors the specified, and they may be varying. As both objective and subjective factors are to be included in each principal factor, a common rating scale can be used for each factor. So, this point already we have mentioned. Now, what is this comprehensive system? So, we can follow this particular comprehensive system. So, I suggest you go through all the factors, like related to the company, you need to consider all these factors. Is it okay? One factor could be the labor relations. It means the relationship between the management and the workers. And what is the trade relations? That means the relationship between you as a company with the others in your industry. Is it okay? So, that is essentially this relationship determines the trade relationships. So, several factors you need to consider, and you have a 4-point scale. So, 4 means excellent, a value of 3 means good, a value of 2 means fair, and if you get a score of 1, it means poor. Okay. So, for all the factors you consider a 4-point scale. Similarly, as far as service is concerned, you need to consider all these factors in general, and each factor, what are the relevant factors for the given case, you first identify and you rate them in this particular scale, 4-point scale. Okay. So, this is just an example, several values I have given. So, this is just an example. Now, this is the product which you are going to purchase. Is it okay? So, related to the product, you need to consider all these 5 factors. First one is the quality, second one is the price, Third one is the packaging. So, this point is to be noted. Fourth one is the uniformity, and the last one is the warranty. So, these are the 5 factors to be considered, and these are all rated. Now, and the fourth factor is related to the sales personnel with whom you are interacting. So, salesperson's knowledge and the sales calls. So, all these are rated. So, ultimately, and the sales service also, this particular factor or this aspect is also rated with the same the rating scale, and ultimately you get a total rating of this, that is 81.93. So, my suggestion is you go through all these factors and you get an idea of a total system for performance measurement and evaluation for the suppliers. So, this is a comprehensive systems. Now, the next important issue you should know, that is how to measure the performance of a purchasing department as such. So, the measurement and evaluation of purchase department performance in a company is an important consideration. While proposing a performance measurement systems in this context, we may not get a general approach. It is difficult, in fact, you cannot get a general approach, but it may result in identifying a set of important principles to be followed in purchasing process. So, that is the main advantage if you try to develop a performance measurement systems for the purchasing department. So, many sorts of the important purchasing principles you should be aware of, and you try to apply those principles as good principles for purchasing. So, so there are many factors you need to consider one by one. So, usually what is important is that in a comprehensive measurement systems for purchasing department, so these are the factors you need to consider. That means, to what extent it helps inventory performance, the quality factors of the products, supply of MRO items, to what extent you can maintain this, savings other than prices like material substitution is an important activity of purchase department, standardization, packing and transportation cost, etc. And of course, you need to consider the administrative cost. So, what is the purchasing relationships with inventory management system? So, this is the last important issue we are going to highlight in this lecture session. That is, the purchasing plays an important role in helping inventory management systems work efficiently and effectively. Without the support of the purchase department, the no inventory management systems can work efficiently and effectively. In particular, the following aspects of inventory management is significantly dependent on purchasing capability and process. So, all these important aspects we have already discussed in the topics related directly to inventory management in the past weeks. So, the first one factor which is affected by the purchasing, that is the inventory control. Second one is the safety stock amount. Already you are aware of the safety stock, the concept and its measurement, control of working stock, inventory classification, inventory records, buying methods and contracts, surplus or excessive inventory, working of MRP and MRP2 systems. This is solely dependent on say the purchasing department's say the performance and the GIT based systems. So, while learning the topics of purchasing management, the following queries need to be addressed. So, some of the queries I have mentioned. So, you please go through them, like identify the steps involved in a typical purchasing cycle, compare management expectations of purchasing and purchasing expectations of management, list the important criteria used in determining possible sources of supply, already we have discussed, and acceptable sources of supply, list the major factors be considered in arriving at decisions to make or buy product. This point already we have elaborated, and identify the factors that can be considered for evaluating purchasing performance. So, with this I conclude our lecture sessions on purchasing management. Thank you.